first of all, these rules. What do you think of these rules? You guys are already out there doing work with drones and helping companies do things. What do you think of these rules?
You know, the rules obviously are great news for everybody. But the way you got to think about it is this is just the beginning of many iterations of this rule. And even more important is remembering what's the source, what's the main driver of all these changes. You know, a year ago, when you talked to the FAA, messaging from the FAA was very different from today.
A year ago was what?
A year ago, you know, the messages were a lot more stricter than today. And what's changed, the main driver is how many companies, big companies, construction, mining, getting involved in this new market, using the drones not only for R&D purposes, but now using it for operating purposes.
Now, are the rules actually any more liberal than sort of the radio-controlled airplanes? I mean, have to be line of sight. Does that give you room to do more than what you could?
That's correct.
A quadcopter?
That's correct. So I don't know if you're familiar with the exemption process. The exemption, we were one of the few companies were granted exemption 333.
And that was it. And then when some companies are doing work in Hollywood as well, right?
Absolutely, under the same exemption. But you had to have an actual commercial pilot fly the drone. But that was too steep for a lot of these companies. Finding a commercial pilot is too hard to find. So what they're doing today is basically changing it so that you can basically go to the DMV almost and get your driver's license, the equivalent of a driver's license.
But isn't one of the things, I mean, for example, I won't name any of your customers, but I know that there's some big companies that are building corporate headquarters, right?
Right.
Flying around those corporate headquarters. Isn't the automation of that kind of thing where you can say, I want an image, I want you to go around this building every day at noon so I can look at the progress.
Correct.
And programming that.
Correct.
Shouldn't that be the great advantage of the business, and don't these rules prohibit that?
Absolutely. We believe that this is, again, going back to what I said earlier, huge progress from a year ago. A year from now, this is going to be completely different. We believe that the FAA is actually working closely with a lot of these companies to allow for these things to happen eventually. Our drones are fully autonomous, so you basically put a box, it flies out, it lands, collects a lot of data, puts it out in the cloud without the need of human interaction. But we also have another product which was called work mode, which allows for people to actually use their drone and actually turn it into a work tool and provide these services for construction, mining.
Do you think regulation will be more liberal in Europe? I mean, is this a case of sort of the stem cell situation repeating itself? I heard that there's deliveries being allowed off an island in Germany.
Right. I mean, absolutely. I think that it's going to be a race. A lot of these countries see the FAA as the main driver, as the main guide for the rules, including Europe. But you see a lot of progress in this space in France, Germany, London, where you can actually be certified, just like you do at the DMV. You know, you take a test, simple test, you get certification, you can actually operate commercially. I think the FAA has seen a lot of that progress outside of the U.S., and they're making changes towards that.
So some tech companies having a hard time in Europe, other ones might find it a lot easier.
Well, yeah, when you were growing off such a small base, it's probably helpful too. I'm also concerned about, you know, it seems one of the great businesses that could really benefit from this is the examination of pipelines. Something
right.
it's required by pipeline operators. Right now they spend vast fortunes flying Cessnas with special equipment to detect leaks in pipelines and things.
Right.
But these rules seem like they would prohibit that kind of use as well.
Well, you know, you have to remember, 55 pounds is actually pretty heavy. You could carry a really good camera on that, and you can actually, a pretty big enough battery to last very long. So you could actually make that work with the new regulation. Now, granted, things are going to change, it's going to evolve, it's going to get easier and better over time. But with the size regulations that we have today, you can actually operate and do a lot of the stuff that helicopters and Cessnas do today.
Do you think these rules are going to help you grow faster, and are you growing fast already?
We're already growing fast already. A lot of these companies have already started using drones. They move away from the R&D stage and actually operating on drones because they see the value they get from this data. So this is just going to augment our growth. Yes.
So Asia's a big piece of Glue's business. Is it going to be faster growth in Asia, easier than Europe, harder?
You know, the growth that we're seeing is exponential. It's incredible. So last year, a lot of these companies were R&D mode. They were trying to test these things out. The amount of companies that are jumping into the space is just gigantic. I mean, the amount of requests and emails we're getting, it's really hard to keep focused. That's why we believe that this is going to be a big industry, not just for us, any drone company that wants to jump into space.
Right. Sounds like a blast. Christian Sanz of Skycatch, thank you very much.
Thank you for
before we get done here, it's time for the B West Bite. We focus on one number that tells us a whole lot. Guest host Niccolo Masi has a bite. I don't know what it is. What is it?
It's 400 million.
That's a lot of something.
It's a lot of something. It's the number that I said on our earnings call. We will exceed by the end of next year in terms of total social followers supporting Glue's celebrity games.
400 million users.
Over 400 million. We're at 240 million with Katy Perry and Kim Kardashian. Look out, the next couple of earnings calls, you'll see some new exciting announcements.
Adding Katy, adding James Bond, you're going to need to... that's a big
No, I'm
number.
not counting James Bond for that. I'm talking about direct celebrities that we'll be working with over the next 18 months.
Wow. That's, how can you safely predict such a number?
Well, we have a great track record at Glue of sort of beating all of the numbers we've given, right? So we might have a few more million in the bag that haven't been announced yet.
I mean, the phenomenon of gaming is just an amazing thing. Niccolo, Masi, I'm really glad you're able to join us for today's show. This is a lot of fun. I told you it would go by quick.
Well, I knew you had to draft in someone who was good looking with, Emily on maternity leave, so here I am.